32 centimeters. That is the terrifying vertical distance this sprawling metropolis sinks into the earth every single year. It is a slow-motion collapse invisible to the naked eye but catastrophic to the foundations below. Standing on the cracked pavement of the Zocalo, you are actually walking on a geological time bomb. The ground here is not solid rock. It is a sponge being wrung dry. Every time a resident turns on a tap, the city descends a fraction of a millimeter further into the ancient clay. This is the paradox of the Aztec capital. It is drowning and dying of thirst simultaneously. To understand this impending disaster, we must look beneath the asphalt. The clues are hidden in the warped staircases of colonial palaces. They are buried in the tilting horizons of the historic district. The story begins in the year 1325, not on solid ground but in the middle of a vast shimmering lake. The original architects were the Mexica people who saw an eagle devouring a snake on a cactus and took it as a divine blueprint. This was Tenochtitlan. It was an engineering impossibility. Lacking large draft animals or the wheel, they built an island city that rivaled Venice or Constantinople in complexity. They drove millions of cedar stakes deep into the lakebed to create stable platforms. These were the asterisk chinampas, floating gardens that fed an empire. The city did not fight the water, it lived in harmony with it. Nezahualcóyotl, the poet king and engineer of nearby Texcoco, designed a massive dike system to separate fresh spring water from the brackish waters of the lower lake. This was advanced hydroengineering. A series of causeways connected the island to the mainland, equipped with removable bridges for defense. The water levels were managed with sluice gates that could be opened or closed depending on the rainfall. It was a hydraulic masterpiece, but this delicate balance was about to be shattered. In 1519, the Spanish conquistadors arrived, led by Hernán Cortés, and they saw a shimmering city of white stucco rising from the blue waters. They called it the Venice of the New World. However, their admiration was short-lived. Following the brutal conquest and the destruction of Tenochtitlan in 1521, the Spanish made a fatal urban planning error. They decided to rebuild the city in the European style. They wanted dry streets for their horses and carriages. They drained the lake. The decision to drain Lake Texcoco was the original sin of Mexico City. Without the buoyancy of the water, the soft volcanic clay began to compress under the weight of stone cathedrals and colonial mansions. The Spanish waged a war against the water that lasted centuries. In 1607, the engineer Enrico Martinez proposed the *desagu*, a massive drainage tunnel to divert the Cuautitlan River. Thousands of indigenous laborers were forced to dig through the mountains to empty the basin. The project was a disaster of unimaginable scale. The tunnel collapsed, turning into an open trench that barely managed the overflow. For the next 300 years, the city suffered catastrophic floods, some lasting for years, turning the streets into stagnant canals. Yet the city continued to grow. By the late 19th century, under the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz, Mexico City sought to emulate Paris. This was the era of French ambition. Wide boulevards were paved over the old canals. Grandiose marble structures were commissioned to signal Mexico's entry into the modern world. But the ground was already rebelling. The heavy stone palaces began to sink almost immediately upon completion. The most famous victim of this geological vengeance is the Palacio de Bellas Artes. Commissioned in 1904 by Porfirio Diaz and designed by the Italian architect Adamo Bori, this white marble opera house is a stunning example of Art Nouveau and Art Deco styles. It is also a sinking ship. The massive weight of the imported Carrara marble was too much for the spongy soil. Before construction was even finished, the building had sunk nearly 2 meters. Bori tried to inject concrete and lime into the soil to stabilize it, but the palace continued its slow descent. Today, if you look closely, you can see that the ground floor is now the basement. The street level has risen around it, requiring steps to lead down into the lobby. This phenomenon is visible across the historic center. The Angel of Independence, a golden victory column built to commemorate the centennial of the Revolution, tells a similar story. When it was built in 1910, the base was flush with the street. As the city around it sank due to groundwater extraction, the column, which sits on deep wooden piles, stayed in place. The result is that the monument now appears to be rising out of the ground. Engineers have had to add 14 additional steps to the base over the last century just to allow people to reach it. The city is literally disappearing. As the 20th century roared in, the demand for space drove the city upward, creating a new set of engineering nightmares. The soil of Mexico City is unique. It amplifies seismic waves like a bowl of jelly. In 1957, a major earthquake struck, toppling the Angel of Independence and flattening structures across the capital. This disaster paved the way for a revolution in seismic engineering. Enter the Torre Latinoamericana. Completed in 1956, this 44-story skyscraper was the first of its kind in the world to be built on highly active seismic land. The chief engineer, Leonardo Zivert, understood that traditional foundations would fail. He devised a floating foundation system. He drove 361 concrete piles 33 meters down into the first hard layer of sand. but he also installed a hydraulic water system in the basement to manage the building's weight. The tower essentially floats on the mud, behaving like a boat in a storm. When the devastating 8.1 magnitude earthquake hit on September 19, 1985, the city was decimated. Thousands of buildings collapsed and concrete dust choked the air for weeks. Yet the Torre Latinoamericana stood perfectly still. It did not suffer a single cracked window. This triumph of engineering proved that survival was possible, but the threat was evolving. Today, the battle is fought in the darkness underground. Beneath the chaotic traffic and the bustling taco stands lies a labyrinth of infrastructure desperate to keep the city dry. The original Grand Canal, built to drain the sewage, has lost its gradient because the city has sunk so much. Gravity no longer works. The sewage must now be pumped uphill. To solve this, the government launched one of the largest infrastructure projects in history, the Tunnel Emeiser Orient TEO. This engineering behemoth is 62 kilometers long and 7 meters in diameter. It is designed to bypass the failing Grand Canal and carry storm water and sewage out of the valley. Construction began in 2008 and faced hellish conditions. The tunnel boring machines had to chew through distinct geological zones, from basalt rock to waterlogged mud. It took 11 years to complete. Workers spent shifts deep underground, monitoring the pressure gauges as millions of tons of earth pressed against the reinforced concrete rings. Without this tunnel, a major storm could submerge the capital in a toxic bath of its own waste. It is the city's lifeline. However, the extraction of water to support a population of nearly 22 million is causing the clay to dry out and crack. This creates differential settlement, where one part of a building sinks faster than the other. You can see this in the Metropolitan Cathedral, where a pendulum inside tracks the shifting of the nave. The floor is a rolling landscape of uneven stone. Engineers have spent decades undersetting the foundation with concrete shafts to correct the tilt. It is a constant game of catch-up. Recently, excavation work for the metro system and building foundations has revealed hidden layers of the Aztec past. In 1978, electrical workers digging near the Zocalo struck a massive stone disk depicting the moon goddess Coyolxauhqui. This accidental discovery led to the unearthing of the Templo Mayor, the main temple of Tenochtitlan, which had been buried under the colonial city for centuries. The ruins sit awkwardly next to colonial buildings, a physical reminder of the layers of conquest. The modern city is literally built on the bones of the old. Every time a shovel hits the dirt in the historic center, construction stops, archaeologists descend. Mexico City construction site aerial shots often reveal these pockets of excavation, where history interrupts progress. The modern metropolis is pivoting toward a new future, one that attempts to defy gravity and geology simultaneously. To the west, the district of Santa Fe rises like a mirage of glass and steel. This area, once a massive garbage dump, has been transformed into a high-tech financial hub. Here, skyscrapers like the Torre Reforma utilize concrete sheer walls and triangular geometries to resist the swaying of the ground. The Torre Reforma, designed by L. Benjamin Romano, is a masterpiece of vertical integration. It features an open book shape that allows the wind to pass through, reducing the structural load. But even here, the water crisis looms. The city loses 40% of its water to leaks in the aging pipe network. Tanker trucks or pipas are a common sight, navigating narrow streets to deliver water to neighborhoods that haven't seen a drop from their taps in weeks. The irony is cruel. In the rainy season, the streets flood with water that cannot be captured, while the aquifers below run dry. Architects and urban planners are now proposing radical solutions. Some suggest unpiping the ancient rivers, tearing up the asphalt to create green corridors that can absorb rainwater and recharge the aquifer. It is a vision of returning to the Aztec harmony with nature. The future of Mexico City depends on its ability to adapt to this liquid reality. The new airport project, once planned for the lakebed, was canceled partly due to soil concerns, shifting focus to upgrading existing infrastructure. The city is a living laboratory for urban survival. As drone flying through clouds captures the endless sea of concrete stretching to the volcanic mountains, the scale of the challenge becomes clear. This is not just a city, it is an organism fighting for its life. The wind blowing through the scaffolding towers of the latest Reforma skyscraper carries the dust of the dried lake. The sound of pneumatic drills repairing the subway tunnels echoes the chipping of Aztec stonemasons 500 years ago. It is a continuous cycle of building and sinking. The resilience of the Chilangos asterisk, the residents of this megacity, is the true foundation that holds it all together. They have survived conquests, revolutions, earthquakes, and floods. They have learned to walk on moving ground. In the end, Mexico City stands as a testament to human sheer will against the forces of nature. It is a place where the past is not just remembered, it is physically present, dragging the modern world down into the depths of history. The eagle still devours the snake, but the cactus is sinking. As we look at the horizon, obscured by the cinematic fog over rooftops, we realize that this city is not static. It is a fluid, breathing entity, constantly reshaping itself in a desperate bid to stay afloat. The question is not whether Mexico City will survive the next century, but what it will look like when the ground finally stops moving. It is the world's most beautiful disaster.